When my husband Chin Yu publicly announced his intention to take my elder sister as an equal wife, everyone urged me to be magnanimous. I said either take her as a concubine, or we divorce. An equal wife? Don't even think about it. My entire family glared at me, accusing me of lacking tolerance, unable to even accept my own sister. My mother-in-law coldly remarked, "You've been married for over 3 years yet remain childless. This alone constitutes grounds for divorce. That you haven't received a divorce decree is due to the Chin family's mercy. Now we merely wish to elevate Lady Li to co-wife status, yet you refuse to relent. How ungrateful. I, the legitimate daughter of the esteemed Li family, married into the Chin household as the primary wife. Yet now I find myself ranked below a concubine's daughter, addressed as Mrs. Chin, the younger Mrs. Li. The Chin family truly disregards moral order," I sneered inwardly. My mother-in-law has been bedridden for years. Since my marriage into the Chin household, I have devoted myself to her care. Beyond meticulously preparing her 3 daily meals, I sought renowned physicians to treat her, gradually restoring her health. Her illness forbade rich, fatty foods, favoring simple fare instead. Despite this, I went to great lengths to make her meals delicious. Yet she seemed ungrateful, often complaining to Chin Yu that I was skimping on her food. After my half-sister arrived, she secretly slipped the old lady delicacies behind my back, osmanthus-scented fish one day, dompa pork the next, crystal-glazed pork hocks the day after. I scolded my half-sister repeatedly over this, but it only made the old lady more displeased. She believes I'm being stingy with those few coins. My mother passed away early. Since marrying into the Chin family, I've genuinely treated the old lady as my own mother. If things continue like this, I don't know how much longer her health will hold out. Seeing my silence, my younger sister-in-law shot me a disapproving glance. Second sister-in-law, no offense, but you lord it over us daily, fine if the whole family obeys you. But now second brother merely wants to take a secondary wife, and you're turning your nose up at him? If word gets out, people will truly mock him for failing to uphold his authority as husband, forced to live under his wife's thumb. How will any of us Chin children ever find suitable matches? Chin Yu's expression darkened further at these words. My sister-in-law was only 16, already of marriageable age. I had long entrusted acquaintances among the ladies to help find suitable matches. 2 years prior, we'd identified a promising candidate, a collateral branch of the Song family from the capital. Though not the main lineage, the groom's father had risen to a 5th-rank official. I'd heard he'd earned merit in flood control efforts, and the court was considering transferring him back to the capital for a post. His future prospects were indeed promising. Moreover, the young master of the Song family was highly ambitious, upright in character, and came from impeccable family lineage and social standing. But just as my mother-in-law was about to hand the betrothal letter to the matchmaker, my younger sister burst out, chased the matchmaker away, and hurled insults at me, accusing me of having a wicked heart and trying to separate her from Jiangxing. Jiangxing? Only then did I learn that my younger sister-in-law had long been secretly involved with Jiangxing, a down-on-his-luck scholar renting a house next to ours. Though Jiangxing came from a poor family, he had passed the provincial exams early and rented a house in the alley next to the Chin residence to run a private school, teaching while preparing for the imperial examinations. If Jiangxing truly had feelings for my younger sister, he could have approached her family openly to discuss marriage. Regardless of the outcome, that would have been the proper way. What kind of behavior was this secret affair? As a scholar, Jiangxing surely understood how crucial reputation was for a woman. Deep down, I looked down on Jiangxing. Every time I earnestly urged my younger sister to sever ties with him, she only grew resentful toward me. Yet when my elder half-sister arrived, she often discreetly arranged meetings between my younger sister and Jiangxing. The more grateful and indebted they felt toward my elder half-sister, the more resentful and disgusted they became toward me. My half-sister now stood beside us, her eyes brimming with tears. Choking back sobs, she said, "It's all my fault. If not for me, my sister wouldn't be unhappy, and our household wouldn't be in turmoil. Yu Lang, please, let it go. I'll pack my belongings immediately and leave the Chin family." My half-sister bore a striking resemblance to her birth mother, concubine Lu, almond-shaped eyes, rosy cheeks, and a charming, alluring beauty that drew pity and affection. Chin Yu looked at her with heartache. "Where could you possibly go if you left the Chin household? Back to the Xing family in Jinzhou, that place that devours people whole. The Xing family of Jinzhou was a prominent household. The current matriarch of the Xing family's main branch had been childhood sweethearts with my late mother. Though Lady Xing had married far away to Jinzhou, she had remained in contact with my mother. Both became pregnant around the same time and agreed that if they had a son and a daughter, they would arrange a marriage between the two children. Later, my mother died during childbirth while giving birth to me. By the time I came of age and it was time to fulfill the marriage agreement with the Xing family, it was my half-sister who was sent to marry into their household. I heard Lady Xing flew into a rage upon learning this and immediately demanded my half-sister be returned to the Li family. But by then, my half-sister had already exchanged vows with Master Xing in the wedding ceremony. Master Xing was quite protective of her and insisted on not breaking off the engagement. Instead, he chose to make the best of a bad situation and married my half-sister. Madame Xing felt profound guilt toward me over this incident, blaming herself for failing to protect even her dear friend's daughter. Yet life is unpredictable. Less than 2 years after their marriage, Master Xing fell suddenly ill and passed away. Though the Xings were a prominent family, fiercely upholding the virtues of chastity and loyalty, my father held an official post in the imperial court. Because of the connection between Lady Xing and my mother, the Xings did not cause my half-sister undue hardship after she became a young widow. Once her year of mourning was complete, they allowed her to return home. Yet inexplicably, rumors began circulating that the Xing household mistreated their widowed daughter-in-law. When my father sent men to retrieve her, she was barely clinging to life. Unwilling to see his daughter perish so young, he brought her back to our home. Facing these baseless accusations, my half-sister offered no defense. Each time she appeared, she seemed utterly terrified, timid and fragile. This only deepened the rumors, fueling condemnation of the Xing household's inner sanctum while also stirring sympathy for my half-sister. After returning, my half-sister did not seclude herself but often visited me at the Qin residence. My father, usually preoccupied with official duties and rarely managing household affairs, even wrote to urge me to cherish our sibling bond and care for my ill-fated half-sister. No need to guess, it was undoubtedly the whispers of consort Lu. My father had married 4 wives, all of whom died young, earning him the reputation of being unlucky with wives. After years of serving in official posts, he never remarried, keeping only concubine Lu by his side. I turned a blind eye to my half-sister's antics at the Qin household. She often praised my good fortune in front of Qin Yu, saying I'd married well. Little did she know this so-called fortune was not something everyone could bear. Regarding the matter of becoming co-wives, I refused to budge an inch. My half-sister wept, demanding to return to the Li household, but Qin Yu, her son, and her younger sister-in-law pleaded with her to stay. Back in my side chamber, Xiao Tao brought warm tea and asked curiously, since the young master and the concubine's daughter truly love each other, and you agreed to a mutual divorce, why hasn't he written the divorce papers? A co-wife is still a wife, but ultimately she's a secondary wife. She's the eldest daughter, not the concubine's daughter, I corrected her with a smile. What kind of eldest daughter is she? Xiao Tao muttered under her breath. Xiao Tao wasn't a house-born servant, she hadn't even grown up serving me. I'd bought her from a courier agency before my marriage. Having spent her youth in the martial world, she naturally knew little of the hidden intrigues within grand mansions. Do you know how much dowry my birth mother and stepmother left me? I asked with a faint smile. My birth mother was my father's second wife. By all accounts, my birth mother came from a merchant family. While my father hailed from an official lineage, he looked down on her. But when he lost his wife and sought a new one, the matchmakers presented either legitimate daughters from respectable families or legitimate daughters from families of lesser standing. Though my mother was of merchant stock, her family's wealth rivaled that of a nation. Her dowry filled 8 carts, and the shops and estates under her name were countless. It was through the assets my mother brought that my father steadily advanced in his official career, carving out a broad path in the bureaucracy where his personal connections were sparse. Alas, before he could climb high enough, my mother passed away during childbirth while bearing me. Though that vast dowry remained within the Li family, my father found it exceedingly difficult to manage. According to the laws of our dynasty, a woman's dowry was considered private property, to be inherited by her children after her death. My father believed the household could not be without a mistress, though his primary motive was to have a new wife manage the dowry left by my mother while I was still in swaddling clothes. Thus, he took a 3rd wife, Lady Jiang. Lady Jiang came from humble origins and devoted herself entirely to bearing my father a son. But man proposes, heaven disposes. When I was 2, concubine Lu gave birth to a son first. Though born of a concubine Lu truly ascended to heaven on the wings of that child. Those years were terribly hard for my young self. Madame Jiang disliked me, concubine Lu and her daughter lorded over me, and worst of all, the entire household had their eyes on the dowry my mother left me. Fortunately, Madame Jiang and concubine Lu kept each other in check, neither willing to concede an inch. I survived in the narrow space between them. Until Madame Jiang also became pregnant. By then, my younger brother was already 3 years old and deeply cherished by my father. Yet my father still yearned for his stepmother to bear him a legitimate son. The feud between Jiangshi and concubine Lu reached a fever pitch after Jiangshi's pregnancy. One day, the heavily pregnant Jiangshi ate only a bowl of lotus root and pork soup before being seized by excruciating abdominal pain. Soon after, she began bleeding and her waters broke. The household urgently summoned a midwife. Upon examination, the midwife realized the pregnancy was not yet 6 months along. This wasn't a delivery, it was a miscarriage. Neither Jiangshi nor the child survived. My father flew into a rage. Jiangshi had always been robust, and her pregnancy had progressed smoothly. How could she miscarry? Later, though I never learned what he discovered, my father let the matter drop, forbidding anyone to speak of it. Not long after, my father took yet another wife. This wife also brought substantial dowry into the household, rivaling my mother's in richness. Moreover, this stepmother treated me exceptionally well. Only later did I learn that my stepmother and my birth mother had known each other. In their youth, they had both studied arithmetic under the same tutor. Fate truly works in mysterious ways. After my stepmother arrived, I finally received the dignity and treatment befitting a legitimate daughter. She shielded me from the open and covert attacks of concubine Lu and her 2 daughters, taught me how to navigate the hidden schemes within the household, how to manage daily affairs, and how to oversee the family's estates. Those years were the happiest of my life. Later, my stepmother became pregnant. Pointing to her swelling belly, she smiled and said to me, "None of my dowry will go into the household accounts. It's all for you and him." I beamed with joy, never leaving her side, terrified anything might happen to her or the child within her. That day, I went to Lingyun Temple to burn incense and pray for blessings. Just half a day, only half a day. When I returned to the mansion, my stepmother had become a cold corpse, along with her unborn child. My eyes burned red and hot, yet my heart felt icy and piercingly painful. I demanded of everyone present, "What happened? What happened?" No one knew. Only that my stepmother had fallen from the stone steps and died instantly. My father hung his head in despair, crying, "What misfortune has befallen our family?" He dared not even look me in the eye. It truly was a family tragedy, for within 2 years, my younger brother, still a minor, also died. The dowry my brothers had long coveted, left by their mothers, ultimately became mine. Without exaggeration, my entire fortune now surpasses even my own father's. Every item was properly recorded on my dowry list, legally mine, my private property. Divorce? What's being divorced isn't a wife, it's a mountain of gold and silver. I skimmed the tea foam and moistened my throat with the liquid. Xiao Dao pursed her lips. "It's nothing like the straightforward way we travel the world." Before she could finish, the door slammed open with a clang. Before I could make out the figure, a shrill voice exploded beside my ear, "Second aunt. Are you trying to drive auntie to her death? Her eyes are swollen from crying, and she's threatening to leave the Chen household. Is there no room for her here? Auntie. How affectionate that sounds. I wonder if your own mother, had she known you'd found her such a sister, would have been so furious she'd leap from her grave." Qin Yunli and Qin Yunyi were the children of Qin Yu's eldest brother, a pair of dragon and phoenix twins. Their mother, Sun Shi, was an old acquaintance of mine, a few years my senior. Even in our maiden days, she often looked after me like a sister, and we remained close ever since. It was she who arranged my marriage into the Qin family, though it proved no happy union. Sun Shi had been frail since childhood. Pregnancy and childbirth were already perilous for a woman, let alone carrying twins. The delivery left her severely weakened. When I married into the Chen family, Chen Yinli and Chen Yinyi were already 4 years old. Sun was at death's door. Clutching my hand, she said, "I trust no one in the Chen family but you. I know your character best. Only in your hands can I entrust my children with peace of mind. Promise me you will keep Lear and Ear by your side until they come of age." Facing death, her entrustment weighed heavily upon me. I solemnly vowed to raise Yunli and Yuni as my own children. Only then did Madame Sun close her eyes in peace. After Madame Sun's passing, the Chen family tacitly agreed to have Chen Yunli and Chen Yuni raised in my quarters. Brother Chen Yu spent most of his time traveling for business. After Madame Sun died, he never remarried. Given her final request, he simply acquiesced, placing the 2 children in my care. During my first 2 years as a bride, Chen Yu resided at the academy in the neighboring county to prepare for the imperial examinations, returning home only once every year or so. This afforded me more time to attend to Yunli and Yuni's daily needs. I never spared any expense in providing for their clothing, food, shelter, and education. When they reached 5 years old, I hired a tutor to begin their instruction. By 7, they were enrolled in the Chen family's private academy. Chen Yunli proved exceptionally bright, though somewhat playful, often earning reprimands from his tutor. Naturally, I held him to stricter standards. Fortunately, his studies advanced remarkably, earning praise from his teacher, who predicted that at this rate, within 2 years he could take the preliminary exams and attempt the Jinshe examination. The entire household rejoiced at this news, and the resentment toward my usual strict discipline softened considerably. As for Chen Yuni, I planned to hire a retired palace lady in 2 years to teach her etiquette, ensuring she earned a reputation as a proper young lady and securing her a good marriage in the future. Later, my half-sister arrived. Compared to my sternness as an aunt, both my brother and sister preferred the gentle and considerate half-sister. Because Chen Yunli was preparing for the preliminary exams in 2 years, the tutor provided him and 2 other children with extra private lessons, teaching them with even greater rigor. Chen Yunli would come home complaining bitterly. I never took it to heart before, merely offering a few comforting words with a smile before urging him back to the study. But when my half-sister heard about it, she took Chen Yunli straight to the private school to confront the tutor. Why was he singling out Chen Yunli with such an overwhelming workload? It was suffocating the child. Who would be responsible if something went wrong with his studies? The tutor, an elderly scholar from the Chen clan who had been brought from the capital at great expense, had taught countless students. This was the first time he had encountered such disrespectful and ungrateful pupils. He immediately blew his top, glaring and declaring he would no longer teach Chen Yunli. I was stunned to learn of my half-sister's actions. I immediately prepared generous gifts to apologize to the tutor and spent silver to enlist the clan elders' help in pleading our case, finally settling the matter. But upon returning to the Chen household, my mother-in-law summoned me. She said my half-sister had mentioned that back in Jinzhou, a tutor had once driven a student to death with excessive strictness. This tutor at the Chen family academy already had a poor reputation back in the capital, too rigid and dogmatic. If it truly doesn't work out, we'll pay for a better teacher for Li Ji. Mother cherished Chen Yunli most of all. Hearing he couldn't eat or sleep properly because of his studies, she was deeply distressed. Mother, you may not know this, but though the tutor is strict, his students have earned tremendous renown. He's produced several top-ranking scholars alone, I patiently explained. The tutor agreed to teach the Chen family because the imperial scholar Chen in the capital saved his life. Persuading him to instruct our children is a blessing beyond measure, an opportunity few could ever hope to attain. Pfft, what fate! I reckon it's just your sister-in-law being stingy about spending that extra coin, my sister-in-law sneered from the side. Even I know the principle of teaching according to aptitude. Others might thrive under that tutor, but my Lear has headaches every day, no appetite, and sleeps restlessly. This is pushing the child to the brink. So it turns out you don't care about him because he's not your own flesh and blood. I'd always kept a close eye on Chen Yunli's daily needs. Where was this loss of appetite? Worried he'd develop indigestion, I often restricted his dinner portions. Restless sleep? That was even less of an issue. He went to bed on schedule every night, took multiple nudges to get up in the morning, and slept through thunderstorms. I murmured softly, but he's always been perfectly fine. Chen Yunli glared at me with eyes full of fury, as if he wanted to devour me alive. My half-sister held him tenderly, whispering in his ear, "Poor thing, your auntie loves you." Chin Yunli turned and threw himself into her arms, wailing loudly, "I want my real mother." The moment those words left his mouth, the atmosphere in the room turned incredibly tense. My mother-in-law eyed me suspiciously, as if searching for evidence that I'd mistreated her grandson. That very night, she wrote a letter to Chin Yu, my eldest brother-in-law, who was doing business far away in the capital. At that time, Chin Yu had just moved back to the Chin family compound from the academy, focusing entirely on preparing for the upcoming major examinations. Citing concerns over disrupting Chin Yu's studies and our marital harmony, the grandmother took Chin Yunli and Chin Yunni to live in her courtyard. Her health was already poor, she was incapable of raising children, let alone two. Initially, my half-sister claimed she feared the old lady's health couldn't endure the strain, so she visited her courtyard every other day to help care for the children. Later, she simply moved into the grandmother's courtyard to live with the children. After returning from the academy, Chin Yu visited the old lady's courtyard daily to pay his respects as a sign of filial piety. Later, when his studies grew tiresome, he would also head to his grandmother's courtyard. It seemed as though there was a remedy for fatigue there, for each time he returned from her presence, he was refreshed and invigorated, as if bathed in spring breeze. Once, I secretly followed him and saw Chin Yu and his sister, along with Chin Yunli and his sister, gathered around their grandmother, chatting animatedly. My half-sister smiled gently as she poured tea and served snacks to everyone nearby. Thoughtfully, she even fed a piece of pastry into Chin Yu's mouth, as if he were helpless. Watching the family's harmonious scene, I was deeply moved. My lips turned upward, and I almost laughed out loud. Then came the day Chin Yunli stormed into my room with Chin Yunni, his face flushed with anger. He berated me, listing my faults one by one, clearly intent on defending his half-sister. I found it rather amusing. "Yunli, you know what? You're a brilliant scholar. You're even more gifted than your second uncle. The way you just scolded your aunt, your words flowed like a well-crafted manifesto. It could have been a fine piece of polemic writing." Chin Yunli, perhaps caught off guard by my words, froze momentarily, his face flushing crimson. That's thanks to the new tutor's excellent teaching." I nodded. "Your studies are commendable, but you still have much to learn about conduct." Not wanting to listen to Chin Yunli's chatter any longer, I turned my gaze to Chin Yunni standing behind him. Chin Yunni had been standing quietly behind Chin Yunli, head bowed, showing neither anger nor joy. I beckoned her over. "What are your thoughts?" I asked softly, knowing she understood I was referring to the matter of her half-sister. While I was strict with Chin Yunli, I treated Chin Yunni with great leniency. Unlike her brothers, she didn't bear the burden of family responsibilities. She only needed to understand right from wrong, so she wouldn't be bullied after marrying into her husband's family. So even though she studied alongside Chin Yunli, her lessons were much lighter. I even hired a tutor to teach her music, chess, and needlework. Yet my half-sister insisted a woman must master one or two dance routines, only then could she move with grace and lightness, capturing her husband's heart. I couldn't help but scoff inwardly. Concubine Lu had taught her plenty of dances back home. So now, whenever she had free time, my half-sister taught my younger sister-in-law and Chin Yunni to dance, often timing it when Chin Yu passed by. Chin Yunni showed no particular reaction, neither resistance nor enthusiasm. When I asked her about it, she glanced up at me before quickly lowering her eyes, unable to meet my gaze. She murmured softly, "I'm sorry." I understood immediately and nodded, accepting her apology. "You two may go now. I'll consider this matter further." I waved my hand, and Xiao Tao practically shoved the two of them out the door. Watching their retreating figures, Xiao Tao couldn't help but curse, "Look at what ungrateful creatures these wealthy families produce. Miss, you'd better keep your eyes open, you've fallen into a den of wolves, a family of ingrate wolves." Just then, the maid Chen Xiao entered from outside and whispered something in my ear. I raised my eyebrows slightly. "What did Manager Zhou say?" Manager Zhou said, as expected, that 2 or 3 dozen shops in Hejian have been tampered with. Cleaning them up won't be difficult, but the person behind this. I knew perfectly well who the mastermind was, but now was not the time to tip off the snake. Not only must we avoid alerting them, but we must also offer her another sweet deal. Hand over those dozens of estates in Longnan and Jiangbei to her as well. Have Manager Wu handle this, he knows that region best. Oh, and I must write to my father, who still holds office. Who knows what whispers Aunt Lu has planted in his ear? I'll have to play along. Since I opposed Qinyu taking a secondary wife, he's been cold toward me. For days now, he's slept in his study, acting as if he'd rather die than reconcile unless I relent. According to our dynasty's laws, a man over 40 without sons may take a secondary wife, or alternatively, with his primary wife's written consent and a notarized guarantee document stamped by the authorities. Now, since I refuse to provide that guarantee, my half-sister cannot marry into the Qin family as she wishes. I hear she prepares late-night meals daily and sends them to his study, staying for 2 or 3 hours each time, sometimes leaving only after dawn breaks. Truth be told, I truly admire my elder sister. Qinyu studies at the academy in the neighboring county. Unable to adjust to the dormitory quarters, he rented a private residence outside the academy grounds. There, he secretly kept a beautiful mistress hidden from his family. Qinyu sheltered his mistress in this golden house for 2 years. In the end, he never brought her back to the main household. She remains in the separate residence, seemingly without any intention of granting her official status. To be fair, Qinyu wasn't a lecher, most of his energy went into his studies. Though only Qinyu himself passed the provincial exams from his family, many Qin clan members held official posts in the capital, some even reaching the rank of cabinet minister. The Qin clan had an unwritten rule: those capable of studying pursued official careers, while the rest turned to commerce. Those in commerce provided funds for the scholars, supporting their studies and navigating the bureaucratic landscape. In return, those who attained official rank offered certain advantages to the merchant branch of the Qin family and fostered mutual support. This included alliances through marriage, forming a powerful network of mutual benefit. Once Qinyu passed next year's imperial examinations, clan members in the court would immediately leverage every connection to pave the smoothest path for his advancement. Precisely for this reason, when my elder sister usurped my betrothal and selected Qinyu, born into commerce yet already having passed the provincial exams, my father, after deep consideration, still gave his consent. Even my father understood that given time, Qinyu would surely rise to great heights with boundless prospects, and Qinyu himself understood this even more clearly. He toiled day and night over his studies, striving only for the moment his name would be inscribed on the golden list. Yet at this critical juncture, he chose to sever ties with me over his half-sister, insisting on elevating her to co-wife status. Whether this shows his devotion or his callousness is hard to say. One thing was undeniable, though: my half-sister was indeed skilled. Sure enough, Qinyu, who hadn't been seen for a month, reappeared, trailing behind him a half-sister who looked tender and pitiful. The rock sugar and red bird's nest soup in my hand was specially brought back from Longnan by Steward Wu. It was simmered with powdered pearls from the East Sea, yet now it tasted rather bland. I set down my bowl, wiped my mouth, and watched the two of them with leisurely composure. Without a word, my half-sister approached and knelt before me. Qinyu, overcome with pity, reached to help her up, but she stopped him. I must kneel. After all, I am the one who wronged my sister. As she spoke, tears the size of beans rolled down her cheeks, a sight of heartrending beauty. I sensed this would be quite the spectacle and dared not steal her spotlight, merely watching her quietly. I know you're unhappy, little sister. I never intended to compete with you for my husband's affections. But Yulong and I truly love each other with all our hearts. As long as I can stay by his side forever, I'll serve you as faithfully as any ox or horse, never overstepping my bounds. Look, she was absolving herself completely. It was Qinyu who adored her, and I was the one standing in the way. She had done nothing, she was merely a passive little white flower. Besides, she added softly, this evens things between us. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I didn't want to say this, but I couldn't bear seeing you laying tormented by guilt over the matter of taking a co-wife. My half-sister glanced at Qinyu through tear-filled eyes. Qinyu looked at her with heartache, then turned and shot me a fierce glare. The speed of that facial transition was truly astonishing. Tell me more. I took the cup of Anqing Jinjin my tea Shatao handed me and took a sip. This year's batch tasted better than usual, so I drank several more mouthfuls. It was you, little sister, who was originally meant to marry into the Jing family of Jinzhou. But you learned early on that third young Master Jing was afflicted with a grave illness, his fate uncertain. So you schemed to have me take your place in the marriage. And as if my misfortune weren't enough, I became a widow soon after entering the household. By this point, my half-sister was sobbing uncontrollably. I don't blame you, little sister. Enduring these hardships in your stead is what a sister ought to do. My heart skipped a beat. How did she know it was me who schemed to have her marry into the Jing family? I studied my half-sister, weeping so pitifully, her eyes flickering with a hint of triumphant scheming. So she didn't know the truth at all. She simply wanted to frame and slander me. Little did she know that every accusation she hurled at me was actually true. The Jing household was a filthy den, every man in that family a scoundrel. Madame Jing was meek and timid. Though she held the title of primary wife, the real matriarch of the Jing household was the secondary wife. Jing Sanling was indeed betrothed to me since before birth, but after my mother passed, the Jing family never mentioned the engagement again. The Jings had chosen a daughter from the prominent Lu family of Jianzhou for third young Master Jing. But before the betrothal documents could be exchanged, third young Master Jing fell gravely ill. His condition deteriorated rapidly, and despite several rounds of renowned physicians, his illness fluctuated between improvement and relapse. The second madam suggested to Madame Jing that marrying a new wife might bring good fortune and perhaps cure third young Master Jing. Madame Jing, ever the soft-hearted one, pondered the matter. Could there be a better candidate than me, a girl from a good family, though far away and motherless? Though the Jings had fallen from grace, their reputation remained among Jianzhou's most prestigious families. When the betrothal gifts and list arrived with the matchmaker, Aunt Lu and my half-sister's eyes widened in astonishment. Naturally, the Jings kept third young master's illness tightly under wraps. I deliberately had people paint a picture of the Jing's glamorous life for consort Lu and her daughter. What an honor it would be to become the wife of the Jing's eldest grandson. Consort Lu and her daughter believed this wholeheartedly, and once that obsession took root, it was impossible to uproot. Madame Lu promptly began whispering sweet nothings in my father's ear. To this day, both Madame Lu and my half-sister believe that my half-sister's successful marriage to Jianzhou was due to Madame Lu's persuasive words, a testament to father's boundless affection for them. Thus, they tacitly accepted their deception. Little did they know that though my father had outlived 4 wives, earning him the reputation of being a widowmaker that deterred any further marriage, leaving only concubine Lu to attend him, his greatest priority remained his own official career. To him, no matter how favored, a concubine and her daughter could never hold the importance of a legitimate daughter. A legitimate daughter's marriage must never be usurped by a concubine's daughter. The legitimate daughter was the very symbol of the Li family's status. I sought out father privately and spoke with him through the night. He finally agreed to let my half-sister marry into the Jing family in my place. I said, "Father, as the legitimate daughter of the Li family, my marriage holds great significance for your career advancement. Only then can it be called a good match." Father saw this as a sacrifice on my part and showered me with praise. After my half-sister's marriage, father indeed began planning for his own advancement. He intended to marry me off to his direct subordinate, Shang Feng, as a secondary wife, a man over 50, older even than father himself. Not only was Shang Feng a high-ranking official, but his grandson had become the crown prince's tutor. Around that time, Sun Shi, the mother of Qin Yini and his sister, learned of my predicament. She proactively arranged for me to marry into the Qin family. I understood Lady Sun's intentions. Knowing her days were numbered, she simply sought a trustworthy person to marry into the Qin family and care for her twin siblings. Lady Sun herself had many sisters, some of whom were decent people, but she couldn't bear to part with them. She couldn't bear to send her own blood relatives to the Qin family. Having lived among the Chens for years, she had long seen through them. The Qin family were no good. I didn't care about Sun Shi's scheming. Compared to the old fox whose family were all high-ranking officials, the Qin family seemed like a decent choice to me. To persuade my father, I voluntarily contributed the tiny portion of personal property my birth mother had left me to the family's communal funds. I also pledged to handle any future expenses needed to smooth things over. Who doesn't know how to talk big? While my stepmother was alive, she had divided my birth mother's inheritance and her own dowry into several parts, handing them over to me in a mix of real and fake assets. No one could ever pinpoint exactly what properties I owned, only that it was a considerable sum. When I first arrived at the Chin household, I did entertain the thought that perhaps I could spend my life with Chin Yu. After all, he was diligent, ambitious, and accomplished at a young age. As long as he didn't betray me, I could treat him well and be kind to his family. So I continued playing the role of the virtuous wife, honoring my mother-in-law, being kind to my husband's brothers and sisters, and caring for the children and nephews in the household. Later, I gradually came to understand the true nature of the Chin family. They were all heartless people, impossible to warm no matter how much effort I put in. All the effort and money I invested felt like throwing it to the dogs. I refused to waste another penny on the Chens. Every moment spent in their household was torture for me. What's more, I accidentally uncovered a shocking secret within the family. Going to Jinzhou to bring back my half-sister was something I arranged in secret. I sent our household steward to Jinzhou to investigate the situation. The Jing family was even more despicable than I had imagined. Not only was my half-sister, a newly widowed woman, confined to the back courtyard, but the master of the second branch would climb the courtyard wall every night to meet with her in secret. I had the steward deliberately stumble upon the second master climbing over the bedhead, exposing the Jing's disgrace. With their reputation ruined, they could no longer keep my half-sister confined and had to send her home. After returning, she dared not speak much of the Jings, fearful of revealing any clues. I was satisfied with my half-sister's tenacity. In just half a year, she had completely taken over the Chin household. All that remained was for Chin Yu to write me the divorce papers. These past years, I've contributed to the Chin household, but I've been rather stingy. After all, no one's money grows on trees. Well, mine might be an exception. But merchant's blood runs through my veins. I value returns. With the Chens, who try to bleed me dry without giving anything in return, every penny I invest is pure loss. My half-sister, however, is different. She's been generous with the Chens. Madame Lu must have secretly given her considerable sums, aiming to secure her foothold in the Chin household. Initially, she truly only aspired to be an equal wife. My dowry was held by the Chens. By marrying into the Chin family and firmly capturing Chin Yu's heart, she effectively seized control of my dowry. Later, when concubine Lu reached for my overt assets and reaped substantial benefits, she believed she had seized control. That's when she conceived the notion of replacing me. My half-sister must have privately struck a deal with the Chin family, pledging to fully fund Chin Yu's future political ambitions. This way, even if Chin Yu married my half-sister and divorced me, the dowry would remain within the Chin household, merely transferred to my half-sister's name. Besides, she's far more generous than I ever was. My half-sister accused me of scheming to have her marry in my place, while Chin Yu stood by, hurling insults at me, calling me a venomous woman unworthy of divorce, deserving only to be cast aside. I couldn't help but laugh aloud, clapping my hands in applause. Want to divorce me? Chin Yu, don't forget my father is an imperial official. Divorcing me would be slapping his face. A flicker of cunning and mockery passed through my half-sister's eyes as she advised, Brother Yu, sister is right. Even if father is deeply disappointed in her and wants nothing to do with her, she remains my sister, his daughter. Hearing this, Chin Yu felt even more certain. My father-in-law serves the imperial court, he's sharp enough to see right from wrong. He won't show favoritism. How do you know he won't? I smiled and replied, if you ally with a concubine's daughter to disown your legitimate wife, do you think people will believe my words or hers? Tell me, among the officials in the court, are there more legitimate sons or more sons of concubines? And their wives, do they support the legitimate daughters or the concubine's daughters? The Chin family has many officials in the court. Oh, and Grand Secretary Chin is also your relative. With such high-ranking officials, don't you think they might have political enemies? Don't you think they might impeach your family for lax discipline and improper family conduct? Do you think Chin Yu's future in officialdom will still be smooth? Or rather, will there even be a path for him? Cold sweat beaded on Chin Yu's forehead. He gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing with fury. What exactly do you want? I was genuinely stunned by his stupidity. I told you, I just want a divorce. Stop making such a fuss. See? That's the Chin family for you, unwarm and unwelcoming. They won't even grant me the last shred of dignity, insisting on casting me out. Even ordinary families, if the quarrel isn't too bitter, would usually opt for a divorce. Send the wife back to her family, part ways amicably, and save each other a little face. Those who divorce their wives so ruthlessly rarely find remarriage. Chinyu gritted his teeth and wrote the divorce papers, 3 copies. I cheerfully took them to the magistrate's office to have them stamped and notarized. According to the laws of this dynasty, those who are divorced by their husbands must be remarried by their fathers or brothers. Those who divorce by mutual consent may marry as they please. From now on, my marriage is my own decision. No one else can arrange it. Humming a tune, I led a dozen maids back to the Chen household to pack my belongings. The entire Chen family, young and old, gathered to glare at me, watching as I emptied their home piece by piece. My younger sister-in-law couldn't contain herself and stepped forward to stop me. "You worthless woman! What right do you have to take Chen family property?" I waved the documents in my hand and replied with a smile, "Can't read? It's written in black and white. These are my dowry items, all inventoried and countersigned by your Chen family." Chinyu dared not speak her anger, instead turning to her half-sister with pleading eyes. What was going on? Hadn't everything been handed over to her? Though inwardly displeased, the half-sister reassured the others, "Let her have it. They're just empty shells anyway. She'll regret it later." I couldn't help but chuckle. After all these years, this mother and daughter pair hadn't grown an ounce, still as foolish and wicked as ever. I hadn't kept a single item purchased for the Chen household. The antique ornaments in old Madame Chen's room, the jewelry of young Miss Chen, the masterpieces in Chinyu's study, anything bought with my own silver, I took with me. As I've always said, no one's money grows on trees. The Chens chased me all the way to the gate, hurling insults until a crowd gathered and they finally stopped. Ignoring their curses and vitriol, I hired 10 carriages to haul my belongings to one of the residences I'd purchased south of the city. After staying there for 2 days, I secretly transferred everything to my estate on the western outskirts. I had purchased the estate before my marriage, staffing it entirely with my own people. The neighboring farmers and the estate guards were all handpicked by me. After a few days of peaceful living at the estate, I returned to the Li family. My father's letter chastised me harshly, saying I shouldn't have acted so willfully. Though the court showed leniency toward women seeking divorce, it still tarnished my reputation. Especially now that his 3-year term was ending, a critical period for performance evaluations and promotions, gossip could harm his political standing. I immediately sent him 10,000 taels of silver. His second letter softened considerably, telling me to stay home without worry. He vowed to tear the tongues out of anyone who dared gossip about me. He also promised to arrange a suitable marriage for me in the future, advising me not to fret over my half-sister. If Chinyu passed the imperial examinations, we could all serve in the same court and remain a family. I scoffed at the notion. The shops in Hejian, the estates in Longnan and Jiangbei, I swiftly reclaimed them all. That fool Lu Sanyuan was still dreaming of becoming a master when they dragged him off to the magistrate's office and beat him to a pulp. After my stepmother passed, Aunt Lu recommended Lu Sanyuan to manage the estates left by our mothers, lavishing praise on his abilities. She argued that as an unmarried young lady, I'd soil my hands with such mundane affairs. Entrusting them to outsiders was unreliable, so why not let her cousin Lu Sanyuan handle them? I agreed readily. As chief steward, Lu Sanyuan was fawned over by the underlings. His constant refrain was, "I must manage my nephew's estate well, it will all be his someday." Still lucid, not yet carried away. I instructed the stewards to make him feel like he could command the wind and rain, to give him the illusion that this entire vast estate was entirely in his grasp. Sure enough, Lu Sanyuan truly believed he controlled everything. He dismissed Consort Lu's inquiries and urgings with disdain, always brushing her off as though he'd already succeeded, as though all the assets were already in his pocket. Consort Lu, too, believed this wholeheartedly. My stewards took the forged documents to report him to the authorities. Lu Sanyuan was quickly arrested. Lu Sanyuan's family confronted Lu's concubine, who had no recourse but to send her half-sister to seek me out. It was the depths of winter. Wrapped in a white fox fur coat, my hands warm in a gold and silver charcoal hand warmer, I smiled at the half-sister who came to my door. "Though I am the aggrieved party," I said, "we are family after all. If you make good the missing silver, I shall not pursue the matter." My half-sister gritted her teeth, her hand resting on her swollen belly, her face worn with exhaustion. Where would we get that much silver? Spare me if you can. You haven't lost everything, have you? I narrowed my eyes, studying my cousin until her anger flared. I'm talking to you. What are you staring at? I replied with a smile, I'm observing just how thick your skin really is. My half-sister flared up instantly, don't forget you're just a discarded wife. What right do you have to lecture me? I think the one with the thick skin is you. If my younger brother hadn't died so young, would any of that wealth have ever come to you? Dream on. True enough. That little bastard deserved to die young. He didn't have to die so soon. Back then, when the Jing family from Jingzhou came to propose marriage, the three of them were huddled in the room plotting how to replace me. Just kill her outright, like last time. Push her down the stone steps and break her neck. Even if father finds out, he can't touch me. My younger brother's smug voice echoed from inside. No way. That Xiao Tao they bought from the escort agency is sharp. Ordinary people can't even get close to her. Concubine Lu shot down the idea. Then let's do it like we did with the Jiang family, a bowl of poison. My half-sister's voice was venomous. Concubine Lu still wasn't satisfied, the Jing family is staying in the mansion now. If she dies from poisoning, they'll definitely notice something's off. I couldn't bear to listen further and stormed out, clenching my fists. My younger brother had a gang of good-for-nothing friends. They often indulged in debauchery together, so dealing with him wouldn't be hard. That time, he went hiking with his friends. When they reached the summit, they drank wine and reveled, all becoming lightheaded. While he was alone, relieving himself, I had someone knock him unconscious and toss him off the cliff. By the time he was found, he was already broken to pieces, cold as ice. Recalling my younger brother's final state, I felt a surge of satisfaction. I told my half-sister that if Lu Sanyuan didn't cover the missing silver, he'd face interrogation by the authorities. If he ended up revealing any names or secrets he shouldn't have, that wouldn't be my problem. My half-sister stormed off in a rage. Perhaps Lu Sanyuan's family made too much of a fuss, for in the end, his concubine and my half-sister scraped together the money to cover the deficit. I thought the matter was settled, but unexpectedly, my half-sister came knocking again. You only need to take 5,000 taels of silver. I dug in my ear with my finger. Are you asking me to borrow money, or are you repaying me? My younger sister is getting married after the new year. Jiangshan can't afford much dowry, but she needs 1,000 taels for her trousseau. Our mother-in-law had a stroke recently, medical expenses are piling up. And Yulang needs a fortune for his imperial exams in the capital. They were your family once, living under the same roof for 3 years. You can't just cut them off. Such heartlessness won't reflect well on your reputation. I nearly spit out my tea. What's it to me? They're your family now, not mine. Besides, isn't the eldest Chin brother doing business elsewhere? How could he not have money? He's just grown accustomed to using mine. Seeing me call her out so bluntly, my half-sister grew flustered and angry. You're being so stingy over a little money. Don't you think about your own situation? If you help the Chin family now, they'll remember your kindness later. I rolled my eyes inwardly, let you reap the rewards of the Chin family's gratitude. I had Xiao Tao fetch 100 taels of silver for my half-sister and send her away. Had the Chin family truly hit rock bottom? I immediately dispatched someone to investigate their situation. What I discovered sent a cold sweat down my spine. Thankfully I'd acted swiftly, the Chin family was on the brink of ruin. Over half a year ago, I noticed discrepancies in elder brother Chin Yu's business accounts, not the kind of irregularities a legitimate merchant would have. Upon discreetly investigating, I discovered he was actually smuggling weapons. The revelation terrified me. If exposed, it would be a capital offense punishable by confiscation of property. To escape the Chin family swiftly, I orchestrated this divorce. But I never imagined that behind the Chin family's arms smuggling lay intricate connections to the fourth prince. Now that their business has faltered, the Chin family is naturally taking the fall. The Chin family is in for a world of trouble this time. Not only were they smuggling weapons, but they also colluded with a prince. To put it bluntly, that's treason. The current emperor is no pushover. I wrote a letter and had Xiao Tao deliver it personally to my father by express horse. On the third day, as Xiao Tao returned, news arrived from our hometown. The clan chief, following my father's instructions, had convened the ancestral hall to expel my half-sister from the family registry. The process was swift. Once the ancestral hall convened, the village head brought the official documents, which were stamped, sealed, and the proclamation issued. The proclamation accused my half-sister of disrespecting the legitimate daughter, violating wifely duty, ruining others' marriages, and bringing shame upon the Li clan, thus warranting her expulsion from the family registry. I heard that upon receiving the news, my half-sister clutched her stomach in fury, crying out in pain. She summoned a doctor that very night, and it took a whole night of turmoil before she finally calmed down. Qinyu smashed things in the study, cursing my father as an old fool and vowing that once she rose to power, she'd make him pay. Come spring, Chen's younger sister married off. While the younger sister gave birth, the Chen household was once again in utter chaos. Rumor had it that before her wedding, Chen's younger sister-in-law pointed at the pregnant half-sister and cursed her, calling her a deceitful charlatan who had duped the entire Chen household, a husband-killing, destitute disaster star who had driven away the family's fortune god, and a dowry-less wretch who had brought shame upon her in-laws. Qinyu brought back the beautiful concubine he had been keeping outside the family, the reason being he could no longer afford the rent for her residence. Having lived with Qinyu for over 2 years, the beautiful young woman knew his temperament inside out and served him with ease. Qinyu also found he could study more peacefully with her, while the sight of his pregnant half-sister only annoyed him. Old Madame Qin now lay bedridden. Though her speech was slurred, she still possessed enough strength to pinch and slap people. Whenever her half-sister displeased her, she would lash out, hardly the one to champion her cause. The half-sister endured labor pains alongside verbal abuse, with not a single attendant by her side. While keeping tabs on the Qin household, I began dispersing our assets and recalled the guards from our country estate, preparing to flee at any moment. Half a year later, the Qin family's crimes were exposed. Imperial troops arrived to arrest them. The entire household was imprisoned, the eldest son sentenced to decapitation, the other men exiled, and the women confiscated as slaves. I heard Jiang Xing, seeking to distance himself from the Qin family, had driven out Chen's pregnant younger sister-in-law, leaving her to wander the streets. Come the following spring, I had reached Li City in Jiangnan. Xiao Tao had several dwarf shrubs brought over, explaining they were a new variety called Four Seasons osmanthus, blooming year-round with a fragrance that wafted for miles, truly beautiful. The flower-bearers all kept their heads bowed, faint marks faintly visible on their faces. One glanced up at me hurriedly before quickly lowering her gaze again. Wait a moment, I called out to them. Where are you all from? The matron leading them immediately answered with a forced smile, we are all maidservants from the East Street Flower House. I pointed at one of them. My flower garden happens to need help. Might I keep her to assist me? The matron flattered with a smile. If madam needs help, I'll select a capable one for you. This girl is too inexperienced. She might not do the work well and end up disappointing madam. I waved it off. Never mind. She'll do. After everyone had left, I had Xiao Tao bring Qinyuni inside. When did you arrive in Pear City? I asked her. First I was punished and sent to the music house. Later, they found me too slow-witted and sold me to the official slave dealer. After many twists and turns, I arrived in Pear City 2 months ago. Though she'd endured tremendous upheaval, Qinyuni remained as composed and level-headed as ever. Having studied dance with my half-sister for so long, she could never be the dullard the music house people claimed her to be. Her visit today was likely deliberate. Speak. What do you seek? I wanted to see what she was really up to. Qinyuni didn't cry or lament her misfortune. She calmly recounted the fates of the Qin family members. Grandmother Qin passed away not long after the eldest brother was beheaded. Qin Yu and Qin Yunli were banished 1,000 miles away, their fates unknown. The half-sister was sentenced to become an official slave. I heard she was later bought by a wealthy merchant as a concubine. The wealthy couple had peculiar habits, and unable to endure them, she hanged herself. After being cast out by her in-laws, the youngest sister-in-law had nowhere to go. In the end, she froze to death on the street, taking her unborn child with her. What astonished me most was that Qinyuni had secretly kept and raised the daughter born to his half-sister all this time. The hardships she endured were too painful to contemplate. Very well. I sighed. I have an estate in the small border town of Biendu. It is yours. Take the child there immediately. From this day forward, we shall have no further connection. Chinyuni knelt, tears streaming down her face, and silently bowed 3 times. After seeing her off, I remembered I still needed to prepare a large red envelope for my father. He was about to take another wife. The Chin family affair had little impact on him. With the silver I sent to smooth things over, he smoothly remained in the capital and was promoted. For an official, having a proper household was absolutely essential. Much information flowed through the wives, and relationships were cemented by them. This time, my father was marrying the legitimate daughter of a county magistrate. Due to the successive deaths of her elders, she had observed 3 years of mourning followed by another 3, delaying her marriage. Of course, my sources indicate this heiress is no ordinary woman. She too has risen through the bloody intrigues of the inner quarters. Seems Madame Lu's days of luxury are numbered. No way, I must pack my bags and head to the capital to witness the spectacle. End.